Hello, it's Joe. So over the past year or so in which I have been watching booktube videos, I have, as you might imagine, read quite a lot of books. And quite a few of those books have been the first books in series in which that I have not yet continued. And so I thought it might be interesting to go through some of those books that start off a series and let you know whether I will be continuing reading those series. Now, I will say that I won't be giving detailed summaries of each of these books, so I'm going to leave Goodreads links in the description as well as timestamps. So if you want to just skip through the video and get to the books that you're interested in, then feel free to do so. So the first book series that I started last year that I haven't continued yet with is The Arc of a Scythe by Neal Shusterman. I think this is currently a duology. However, I believe there's going to be a third book as well, and it might even continue further than that. But for now, I've only read this first book, which is Scythe, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I gave it 5 stars. It's a YA dystopian, which you might think, you know, the time has passed for dystopians, but I personally really love them, and I think this is a great addition to the genre. So the plot and the world building of this book were really interesting to me, and I loved that aspect of it a lot, despite not really liking the characters. Well, I didn't dislike the characters, but like the characters didn't stand out to me particularly, and I really did not like the romance in this book. However, despite those things, as I said, I like the plot and world building enough that I will be continuing on with this series, especially because I've heard a lot of people who loved this book say that the second book, Thunderhead, is even better. And so I can't wait to continue on and find out what happens. And the next book series that I started and haven't continued on with is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is a YA paranormal series. And I read this in October, I believe, of last year, and I gave it 4 stars at the time. I did really enjoy it, however, I did have a few issues with the pacing. But that being said, I have heard that this is actually the weakest book in the series, and so the fact that I really enjoyed this one makes me definitely want to continue on with the series. Even though personally I think this book could have been a standalone with the way it ends, I didn't particularly finish it feeling like a sequel was necessary. However, because everyone says that the sequels are even better, I'm going to have to jump on the hype train and find out for myself. And the next book series that I started was The Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss, the first book being The Name of the Wind. This is a epic fantasy, I think. And I read this in spring of last year, and at the time I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, or 4.5, can't really remember. But looking back, I don't really have any attachment to this story. I don't really remember the plot, and what I do remember I don't really care about. And the characters don't really stand out to me enough for me to want to go back and find out what happens to them, because I don't really care about them. And so this is going to be one of the series that I do not continue with, which might upset some people because I know it's a very beloved series, but personally I don't really care what happens, and so I won't be continuing. Oh, and plus I think we have another Song of Ice and Fire situation here where the author is taking a million years to release the next book, so I really don't want to get invested all over again just to be disappointed and never get the next book. The next book series is The Legacy of Orisha by Tomi Adeyemi, the first book being Children of Blood and Bone. Now, this is the only book in the series that is out, so of course I haven't continued. However, I definitely am going to continue when the next book comes out, which I believe is at the end of this year now. I know she's pushed it back a few times because she wants to make it perfect, which is fine by me. But yeah, I'll definitely be continuing on with this series. A large part of that is due to the fact that this first book ended in such a way that I need to know what happens next. I cannot not read the second book because I just need to know how the situation at the end of this is resolved. I also really liked the world and want to see how Tomi Adeyemi can expand that, and some of the characters I really enjoyed as well, particularly Amari. I wasn't a huge fan of the main romance in this book, so that's kind of a negative, but not enough for me to not want to continue with the series. And also, I just really like Tomi. I met her last year at a book signing, and she's just a really nice person, and I want to support her, and I want to see how her writing grows. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for Children of Virtue and Vengeance, which is the name of the second book. The next series is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I read this middle of last year, I think it was, or spring, around the same time I read The Name of the Wind, actually. And again, with The Name of the Wind, this is kind of an epic fantasy series. And again, like Name of the Wind, I will not be continuing with it, which might upset some people because it's very popular, but I just don't care. The magic system in this book, although objectively and technically amazing, was just not something that I particularly enjoyed. I know a lot of people love the magic system and think it's really unique, which it is unique, but it's just not the type of magic that I enjoy reading. It's just not the type of magic that I personally enjoy reading. And also the main character, whose name I think was Vin, she is not very memorable at all, and I barely remember anything about her personality or motivations or anything like that, and so I don't really care what happens to her in the future. And to be honest, I seem to remember that this book kind of wrapped up nicely and didn't really require a second book. Maybe I'm just misremembering it, but yeah, personally I will not be continuing on with this series. The next series is The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. The first book was Nevermoor, and I read this, I think this was the first book I finished this year actually, and I really enjoyed it. It's a middle grade fantasy, kind of along the lines of Harry Potter, though not exactly. I did have some issues with it in terms of Harry Potter. Like, I thought there were certain things in this which were a bit too like Harry Potter, and those kind of threw me off a bit, but not enough that I don't want to continue with the series, because I definitely will be continuing on, because I've heard great things about Wondersmith, which is the sequel, and there are going to be even more books, and I'm really excited to see what happens, because I remember really enjoying Morrigan's character and several of the other characters, and I actually am invested in the story, and I've heard that the second book is darker, which I'm always here for, so I'll definitely be continuing on with this series. Next up is the Cassidy Blake series, I think it's called, by Victoria Schwab. This is a middle grade paranormal series, and this first book was set in Edinburgh, which is a large reason why I read it, because I love Edinburgh. And I've heard the second book is set in Paris, which is a big plus, I must admit, and I've seen the cover and it's absolutely beautiful, so part of me wants to say yes, I will be continuing with the series because I love the cover and I love Paris. However, I didn't love this book enough to continue on, and so I'm going to say no for now. However, if the second book comes out and people hype it up enough, I probably will pick it up, because I'm a sucker for a good cover and I love jumping on a hype train. So, and the last book series that I have to talk about is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Riordan. This is a middle grade or YA fantasy series that is based on like Greek mythology and stuff. You've probably heard of it. And I read this at the end of 2017 actually, which was before I discovered BookTube. However, it was like the week before, so I thought I'd just include it in this video. I feel like this is a series that I would have loved when I was younger, and when I read this in 2017, I kind of felt a bit too old for it. And I'm not one of those people who thinks that you can be too old for a book. However, I just feel like my enjoyment of this book would have been a lot higher if I was younger. And personally, I didn't like it enough to want to continue with the series, so I won't be. And also, I don't think Greek mythology interests me as much as I thought it did. Like, I really thought that Greek mythology was something that interested me, but reading this and watching some, Greek mythology TV shows and that kind of thing, I just don't really care about the Greek gods, and this is like a realization that has kind of shook me, because on paper Greek mythology is something that I would be highly interested in, but yeah, I guess not. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this video. Let me know if you have read any of these series and want to change my mind about whether or not I should continue with them. I'm willing to bet that I'm not going to change my mind, but you're welcome to try in the comments below. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like or a thumbs up. If you think you like more of my videos, then subscribe below. All of my social media links will be down below in the description, as well as the Goodreads links to all of the books that I mentioned if you want to go and check those out. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. Hope you're having an amazing day. Goodbye.